I've gotta say, every now and then, I find myself completely obsessed with a historical time period for no reason. Lately, it's been ancient Rome. I guess it started after I found a TikTok showcasing AI art that shows what ancient Rome would look like if it never fell, so I did what anybody would do in a situation like this and tried to find the nearest video game I could about ancient Rome. Lucky for me, Ryse Son of Rome exists. Developed by Crytek, the people behind Crysis, in 2013 for the Xbox One as an exclusive title, which is also available on PC by the way, Ryse Son of Rome tells the story of Marius Titus, a Roman general who must defend his nation against the barbarian threat. Ryse Son of Rome is certainly an interesting game, but is it really still worth playing in 2023, or is it just outdated now? Let's take a look. Ryse Son of Rome was originally supposed to be a first-person, Kinect-only title for the Xbox 360 and had actually begun development in 2006. Thank God Crytek decided not to do that, because we all saw how the Kinect turned out. Instead, Ryse Son of Rome became a third-person hack-and-slash game, which is much better if you ask me. A launch title for the Xbox One in 2013, Ryse Son of Rome did receive mixed reactions from critics when it launched. Many praised its stories, visuals, and production, but many didn't like its repetitive and simple gameplay. As I always do with these videos, I'm going to break down the different elements of Ryse Son of Rome to give you a good overview of whether or not this game is worth playing or worth buying for that matter. For starters, let's talk about the visuals. For a game released in 2013 for the Xbox One, this game still looks very good. It was detailed and beautiful to look at. The animations and motion capture cinematics were also great. Of course, it's not really as nice as video games are nowadays, and some of the graphics and textures didn't age too well. However, for a game that released on the Xbox One, which we know had some pretty rough hardware limitations, it's good enough. Certainly still good enough to play through, so there's no issue there. The voice acting was well done and it was believable. In many video games, I often find that voice acting helps to play a major role in making a character feel human and less like just a character in a video game. I feel like Ryse Son of Rome did a pretty good job of bringing the atmosphere of ancient Rome together. You have the nice map designs, the color palette, neat armor designs, and more. From the outside, Ryse has many elements that make it a relatively good game. However, getting deeper into Ryse Son of Rome, some problems start to appear, mainly in the gameplay. Although the hack and slash is decently fun and there are some brutal executions to go along with the gameplay loop, it is for the most part very repetitive. You have a sword, shield, and some other ranged weapons. This is all fine and it works well for a hack and slash. The game also emphasizes this concept of flow, which refers to the player's ability to go from one fight to another after defeating another enemy with fewer limitations. The combat also emphasizes combos. There are rewards for being able to build a long combo essentially, so you can regenerate your health, for example. For the most part, you're involved in large-scale battles, as is the Roman experience, and you sometimes get to command NPCs in order to help defeat large enemy numbers. Since you're Roman general, this makes sense. Now, the Xbox One did launch with a Kinect system, and so Ryse Son of Rome had voice integration through the sensor that allowed you to issue commands to the NPCs to provide assistance via things like a volley of arrows or catapults. However, I'm on the Series X, I just use the controller for these prompts, you don't need a voice sensor. The executions are probably the highlight of the combo, and you get perks for every successful execution you enact, like I mentioned before. Besides regaining health and XP, you can also slow down time and slash at your enemies quickly, so there's a few things that you can do. The game will prompt you to press buttons to enact the execution in a timed fashion, but it still does it for you anyway, even if you don't press anything. However, your reward is going to be smaller. Double executions are also possible if you can line up 2 or more weakened enemies in a relatively close proximity to you. There is gore alongside the combat, but it's not anything insane. The maximum you'll probably see is an arm getting chopped off or something, but if you're expecting this game to be super brutal, it's not. But you see, the combat is basically just that. You go into battle, mash the same buttons, kill the same looking enemies, and move on. There's nothing really super special about the combat after the first 2 hours or so. And I'm not saying that the combat isn't fun, but it's not very diverse throughout the title. I expected maybe some different sequences, especially since it's a single player game, but it wasn't super varied at all. Enemies were also pretty much the same. You occasionally got a new enemy, but for the most part, it's the same guy trying to kill you every single time. I know that the game isn't new or anything, but pretty much every review I've read about this game echoed the same sentiment. The combat at first is really fun, but it quickly grows repetitive after a while. Anyways, let's talk story and plot. Those are pretty important for a story-driven game. Ryse Son of Rome starts out with Roman general Marius Titus leading the defense of Rome against invading barbarians. He then helps get Emperor Nero into a safe room and then tells Nero his life story. Guess that's one way to do it. Marius's legacy begins when he returns to his family villa in Rome after being stationed in Alexandria as a member of the 2nd Legion. While he's there, barbarians invade and kill his family. Commander Vitalian, who had served alongside Marius's father, has Marius transferred to the 14th Legion, promising Marius the chance to get vengeance. I don't want to spoil too much else about the story, because I'm sure some people watching this haven't played Ryse before, but it's a pretty good story. I honestly had fun with it, I felt like the emotions were there, and there was a plot. Overall, it delivered the story it was advertising, and it gave you an adventure in ancient Rome. I think it's a bit strange that there aren't more action-adventure games that take place in ancient Rome, because it's probably got some of the best potential for a game like that, but oh well. Almost every good game that takes place in ancient Rome is a strategy game, which, nothing against those, but I also like story-driven action-adventure games a little bit more than strategy games. I didn't think the story was anything revolutionary, but it's fun to play through. My only issue is that the story felt rushed. All in all, if you just play without getting a bunch of collectibles and you played on an easier difficulty, it's about 6 to 8 hours to complete. It's honestly not really that long at all, which is a little disappointing. I guess maybe it's so repetitive at times that you don't really feel it, but I wish the devs at Crytek developed the combat system and gave more weight to the story. But it was still enjoyable. I couldn't find myself hating on Ryse Son of Rome's story, and I still thought it was overall well done. The writing was relatively good, the plot was pretty neat, and the game itself complemented its story well. I just wish that there was a bit more variety in the combat because I think this game would have benefited a lot from that. I think playing on a harder difficulty probably provides more fun and challenge with the combat, and it might lengthen the amount of time it takes to beat the game. Ryse also has a multiplayer mode, which is really a co-op gladiator arena game. You have to slaughter hordes of enemies in different levels and environments, completing wave after wave. You earn experience and gold, which you can then use to buy booster packs, and those contain items that can improve your gladiator. For the most part, I think Ryse Son of Rome is a fun game, but I wouldn't say that it's worth the full price. I think that if you're looking for a fun game that isn't super long with like a massive open world or anything, you just want to go through like a linear story experience, then Ryse is a good option. It does sport some like repetitive combat, but its executions are pretty brutal and the graphics help give the game life. I recommend if you want to get Ryse Son of Rome, get it on sale or play it through Xbox Game Pass, which is where I personally played it. I'm going to put some links in the description of places where you can get the game for cheap if you want to check it out. For anyone who wants an action-adventure, story-based game that takes place in ancient Rome, this is pretty much your best option. And it's not a bad option at that, I still enjoyed it a lot. I think that Ryse Son of Rome did have plenty of good aspects to it, but it really was more of a way to show off the hardware capabilities of the Xbox One. I'm a bit disappointed that Ryse Son of Rome won't get a sequel at this point so far, and I think that this game could benefit so well from a sequel for the latest hardware. Apparently there were some issues that occurred between Microsoft Studios, which was the publisher, and Crytek about IP ownership, but with the lack of exclusives on Xbox, they really need some sort of saving grace already. It's getting a bit irritating watching PlayStation get so many exclusives and Xbox slacking off so hard like this. Anyways, thanks for tuning into DZSH Gaming. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe with notifications set to all so you never miss out on a single upload. Let me know what you think about Ryse Son of Rome in the comments below. Don't forget to check out our website for gaming news, entertainment, and more. The link is in the description, alongside all of our other important links.